It's never as fast as it seems like it should be. It's never as fast as it seems like it should be. Oh, there's me again. Okay, all set. Okay, I'm going to resend the link to Paul. He's having trouble with the Zoom link, so I'm going to resend that to him. He just texted me. So. Oh, geez. I know why that's not working. All right, Paul will be on with us in a minute. I mistyped his email address.
Do we need to officially gavel in?
Yep, because there's a quorum of you. So.
Okay. Hi, Kevin.
Hi, Kevin.
Well, Paul will jump on here in a second. If there's anything we want to talk about as a committee.
Well, Harmeet, did you want to gavel us in?
Oh, sure. Oh, we are waiting for me to gavel this in. Okay. Yes. Let's begin our long-term planning committee meeting. We'll call the meeting to order. Right. I just had two quick comments looking over the designs that Paul had sent out. One was the initial increase in linear feet of shelving between existing what he's calling phase 1 and phase 3. I'm not getting too hung up on what we call phase 1 and phase 3. I mean, I think those are certainly within up for debate. And I see Paul and Lisa have joined us. Good morning, guys.
Yeah, sorry about that. We couldn't make the link work.
My fault.
Oh, okay.
Okay. I guess Paul, anything you guys want to start off with here?
Well, we have a bunch of things to go over today, and as you started to mention, the phasing is certainly one of them because there are, as you can imagine, there's a lot of ways to skin a cat here that we could break into pieces that depend on how valid they are for your community or when you want to take the bigger bites and deferring other pieces till later. We looked at them from the perspective of trying to even out the sizes of the projects in a way that made them all palatable, but you can certainly combine them or do them in different order to a certain extent, as long as the constructability isn't affected. So Lisa sent out a set of sketch plans the other day that had, in addition to the plans, we've shown where, for example, collection has changed. We have the documents to increase 11%, give or take, the lineal footage of shelving, which, given that the priorities had more to do with meeting rooms and assembly spaces and things like that, The 11% increase in stacks is probably a good number for what we're seeing in terms of circulation statistics across the state. And then what we thought we'd do today is walk quickly through these hybrid schemes, because these are a combination of the various comments from previous schemes, and show you why we've thought of doing them in the order we have. And then very, very preliminarily, I've put some numbers, but they're more a scale of magnitude than specific numbers. And I just want to be clear on that, because there's a lot of things that aren't known still that can affect things, but just to give you a sense of where we are in terms of sizes of projects. So we thought we'd try and keep it to an hour, but if that is agreeable to you as an agenda, that's what we thought we'd go through: the schemes, the content of the documents for shelving versus existing, and then very briefly talk about the size and phasing.
Yeah, that sounds fine. I apologize. I'm going to drop at 10:30 here for another conflict that just came up. But go ahead and walk us through it. Don't worry about that. And I'll just send Jeff an email here with any questions that I don't get a chance to ask.
Got you. So what I'll do then is, if I can share screen here.
Should be able to.
Yep. Did that come up?
Yes.
Great. So Lisa's going to walk us, and just briefly, I think you've had a chance to look at these for a few days, and probably had a sense of what they were even before that, because they, as I say, they're versions of where we were previously. But just very quickly, let's talk about the entry. This is the main floor, and we'll start with the sheet, which is the existing conditions. Anything to say here?
Paul,
Oh, sorry, Michelle.
I did have a question. The scheme that we're looking at right now, this is the one with the minimal change. Is that correct?
Well, phase one
Phase
of
one.
this scheme is the minimal change. That's right.
Okay, and the final on I guess I'm a little confused on what exactly we're looking at. Are we looking at scheme 1, scheme 2, scheme 3? And I understand these are phases, but the end result is going to be which of the prior schemes we've discussed?
What we've done is consolidated all the comments for all the prior schemes into one master plan that has multiple phases. So if you were doing an absolute minimal, we don't want to change the footprint, we just want to redo the inside, that's just phase one of this scheme.
Gotcha.
Phase two, if you decide to do the addition, for example, that adds the meeting room, which is on your screen now, that's something you can do. So essentially, we've gotten away from disparate schemes into a single consolidated scheme that has multiple phases, and you can stop at any point along the way. We tried to make them so they were all self-sufficient. If you stop after phase one, which is minimal, phase two, which has an addition, phase three, which then gets the most extensive. Does that make sense to you?
Yes, it makes sense. I honestly just I did not recall a discussion that we were going to move away from choosing between schemes 1, 2, 3, or 4 way back when. Maybe I missed a step in there, but yes, please continue.
Okay.
Sorry.
These are certainly, we can still modify these if there are things from scheme 2 or 3 or something that you think should be brought back into this. We can see about doing that, but we tried to accommodate all the comments we were getting from those schemes individually to make a single consolidated scheme. But let's see how it works, and if it doesn't, we'll come back to it. Okay.
All right. Thanks.
The door's not closed. Okay.
Great.
So the existing conditions drawing. Anything to comment, please?
No, the only thing that would happen is I started to show where some demolition would happen in order to accommodate the scheme. So it's sort of minimal demo, except for the main gallery, the brick walls we're going to cut through so that you have a lot more visibility between the lobby space or the gallery space and the rest of the library. And then basically a 400 square foot addition here and 175, 174 addition here. So that's the basically the start of phase one.
I don't know if anybody has an appreciation for square footage, but obviously if you think of 400 as 20 by 20, it's a very small addition. So a few hundred square feet is tiny when you look at additions. So,
But it also would change the entry so that you would come straight in and then leave room for an addition for
For
a
a
next
future phase.
phase.
Yeah.
So there would be some site work that would happen in phase one.
so
We wanted
and
to,
this is, I'm sorry.
if we wanted to reduce that walking distance further from parking lot to building entry, could
Mhm.
that extension be longer?
Absolutely.
Sure.
Yeah, we in fact, when you see it here, we can extend that space here. You can see how we've adjusted the plaza for the straight on entry, and instead of entering here, we're now entering up here, but we could bring it even further. We could connect maybe even to the half round or something like that. But that's easy to do because it doesn't affect any other building systems. It's sort of discrete over on this side.
We
Yeah,
could
that was my
do
assumption. Okay.
we could do that as a pergola too. So
Yeah.
instead of having it actually be built or
Enclosed space.
enclosed space, it could still be covered further out.
Architecturally, a covered walkway that picks up the architecture of the building. You see that at schools a lot where they have bus drop-offs and things like that, where they need a long covered space. I'm not saying we want this to look like a school, but it's integrated into the architecture, not just a tarp strung over a walkway. Okay, so this is phase one where there are minimal changes to the footprint. So the only changes in phase one are this addition and this little addition down here. So a few hundred square feet. Originally, we were thinking about trying to do the upper level stuff, but you'll see in a little bit, we've pushed that off to phase three for reasons of scale on the whole thing. But phase one right now is essentially these two small additions that change the entry. And Harmeet, as you mentioned, they could get a little larger if we wanted them to, but it's essentially rearranging the interior, creating a bunch of new spaces around the perimeter, a teen space, and so forth. But Lisa, maybe you can hit just the highlights so we make sure we.
So when you come in, you actually enter the library here. So it also cuts down in this big long walkway also. So you come into the library of things and potentially some new materials. You have places to sit.
Reading niches.
Reading niches. You have a small meeting room with glass front. Then you've got some glass and entry into office spaces. Figuring this would be public relations. These could go both ways between staff and public. And then this is the main circulation and help information desk. But this is located for the line of sight for all the entries. So the new main entry, the original one stays, it just moves from this location out just to gain some more space in here. There's a line of sight to kids. And then you can see all the way down through, because these types of things here are lower, like 4 foot high, movable shelving and lower things. So you can see into, we stole this space that had collection and moved it out here to utilize this main space better. This is glass all the way around teens and through, so that the children's librarian could also see into the teen space, and circulation can also see there. So we've glassed off the children's room, so for noise, but we've left it all glass so you can see in, and we've created some more space for kids, like we're thinking this could be a toddler room with an archway.
Or toddler space. It doesn't even have to be an enclosed room.
But then we've created these sort of bay windows into the lobby space. So
the Main Street Gallery. Yeah.
So you can still, you get that connection between the two. We've also taken over, there's a lot of wasted space in the alcoves to get into the main large meeting room. We've made them a little bit smaller and cleaned them out a little bit. And we've created a couple more study tutor rooms or Sohos, small rooms out here. Like we said, we made a medium space here. And we've made the staff break room over here, trying to give them some glass. And we've created a real janitor's / storage space here. There's a little alcove right now off the men's room. So we've tried to create a more usable space. And then there's a direct connection that we can have right now between the kids and the story room, or if they need to use the bigger room. When you get to phase 3, I've taken over this space so that there is a direct connection between the kids and the story time activity room. And then this could just become an adult meeting room or activity space at that point.
Another one that can be, and again, by keeping the gallery here, we keep going back and forth because we don't want to be redundant with space, but we do want a threshold between inside and outside the library proper. But everything outside has to have access to the restrooms and these various meeting rooms. But what this means is you have a large meeting room, 2 conference rooms, theoretically even the staff lounge. And then in the future, either this is the children's for now, but in the future, this becomes an adult room. There's lots of options for meeting space going forward that don't involve violating the threshold to the library itself. The other thing I wanted to add is separating the children's room is partly an acoustic question, but it's also a safety question, which we're seeing more and more. Obviously, we're trying to address the spread of virus safety questions, but one of the other common questions is about protecting children who either wander off or are led off by, even if it's an adult they know, a non-custodial parent or things like that. And by actually creating a physical separation between children's and the main body of the library, we can keep it glassy and it's light and open, but there is actually a door then to go through. And so staff have an easier time of managing who's in a space or not in a space, rather than somebody just skipping over a line in the floor.
Just another couple highlights is we've sort of doubled the back of house space, made it a little bit more efficient that you can actually go around and have parking spots for book carts and shelving along this one side where there's high windows. But we've also given a direct connection here so staff could come out and use this patio if they wanted. We were thinking, because right now they use that patio, but we also are showing, this could be a small staff patio over here right outside the break room.
Even more private.
Even more private. But we've also created 2 small study rooms up here in sort of this quiet zone. But we've pretty much left the stacks the way they are. We took off the 3 that were on the end here because that doesn't meet code right now to get around the end of where the existing stacks are. We've also rearranged it just a little bit. This row of stacks had 2 more coming out, so it would sort of block your view. So in this first phase, you lose, I think, 6 nonfiction collection stacks. We could put them here. We could, look at how to gain something back, but we've gained a lot.
We've gained for new and popular. So in essence, this phase 1, aside from the minor additions, rearranges a lot of things in the existing building to get us to be able to respond to the requests for additional meeting space of various sizes. That was really the key. We now have a large meeting room, some smaller meeting rooms, and so forth. And by increasing the staff area, it'll also allow us, as we get into the details of it, to create more separation there, which is in fact a virus safety question, so that the landscape furniture has taller partitions that are glass, but also more space between stations.
The other thing that we had a second thought about is since we were originally thinking we would go ahead and do the construction here at this phase, but in order to save some money, if we didn't, we could actually utilize the house right here. We've taken a lot of the IT out so that you could have a collaboration space here. IT offices could go into the house. Some of the staff office,
We're talking about the Borthwick
yeah, the
property
board,
house.
which is right here in plan. So there could be a connection from this door to the back of the house, so some staff that didn't have day-to-day interaction with public could go there. The IT equipment is not as heavy as stacks. There's really no way that you should be storing books over there in the house just because of the loading on the floor. But offices are perfectly fine to go over there. So, because we were showing a reconfiguration of the offices upstairs. You could continue to use the upstairs for storage of books because that's what it's designed for. So you could use that whole.
I do have a question. Sorry, and time is getting tight because Harmeet has to go. So I just wanted to ask, because you were on the topic of the Borthwick property, I think it's great to consider using it in its current state, but also I don't think we have seen an estimate for demolishing it and then using the space for something else. And I'm wondering if it's possible to get an estimate on, how much it would actually cost to demolish the property.
We have actually.
We put numbers on that for today, as a matter of fact.
Is
for
that
demolition.
okay? So we just haven't gotten to that discussion yet.
Right. We had said previously that there were very few options for the property and that demolition would be the most likely long-term solution. Lisa was trying to find a temporary use of it, IT being one, or IT could go upstairs. But it's probably, our estimate at the moment is about 120,000 to demolish the house there, paying prevailing wage, obviously, and getting rid of hazardous materials that might be there. That's an estimate at this point, but based on other projects where we've had to tear down buildings, Stillwater, Saugerties, Port Jervis, it's probably in the ballpark there.
Okay, and I assume that the price is so high because of the like you said, the hazardous materials, because usually the demolition that's kind of a high price.
Well, they have to,
Yeah.
as you said, they have to dispose of that properly. So they can't just come in, tear the building down. Not only do they have to dispose of that, but then they have to afterwards, when they demolish the rest of the house, use dust containment procedures. So they've got to be out there hosing it down while it's being torn so that dust isn't going up into the public spaces. And the biggest single cost is probably the fact that you're paying prevailing wage rates. You're not just getting, Joe's demo to come in and do this. Because you're a public institution, you're paying prevailing wage rates that
Right.
the state determines for laborers, for backhoe crew, whatever it may be.
Right. And again, I'm just going to throw something out there, and I realize it probably isn't the most opportune time in our discussion of phases, but because Harmeet is leaving, I just want to get it out there. I was wondering, because curbside has been so popular, and people are hoping that it's going to continue, possibly even beyond the pandemic. If that Borthwick property, if we were to demolish it and do something else with that space, I'm wondering about a possible drive-through. Grocery stores were doing that kind of thing long before the pandemic, as far as driving up and receiving your packages to your vehicle. And I think it's something that possibly the library could consider. I don't know how difficult that would be to draw up a scheme for that, or to add that in at this stage.
No, that wouldn't be too bad. It would involve a phase probably beyond the 3 that we're talking about, but we could move that up in priority if that was something we wanted to do. We just did a drive-through at the Moffett Library in Washingtonville a year or 2 ago. And right now, as you say, during the pandemic, they're saying, thank goodness we stuck with, it was a question, do we want to do it, do we not? They're golden now when it comes to drive-through pickup because they're set up for it.
Yeah.
But Lisa had started, yeah,
We,
sorry.
I don't know if you can, I don't know where you can see. We started to do a little scheme of something that could happen on the site, or just straight parking. Because I know that whatever the county office is across from you sort of steal your
The court.
spaces, but as a way for you guys to get more parking over there. But we could definitely think about having a loop there, a drive-through loop.
The trick is we have to loop it so that
So
the
that the
left-hand
driver-
side of the car is on
Right.
the building side. So it's counterintuitive to the way the rest of the site circulates at the moment, but we're
That's a
probably
possibility.
rethinking a lot of that piece anyway. So Michelle, it's an excellent point. If that's something that we want to consider as let's look at this, or as a priority going forward, now's the time to be thinking of it in the master plan and then deciding where it makes sense to construct it. Yeah. No,
Okay,
it's a good thought.
all right, thank you.
So coming back again, the phase one is fairly straightforward. It does get expensive in the sense that it's a large building and it is coming on a half century old, give or take, right? 1970s. So of course I'm a half century old now that I think about it, but having said that, there's a lot to do there. So the other question mark, and we were just going through this at the Niagara Falls Public Library as well, the building itself isn't exactly built for flexibility because of all the masonry that you have. In other words, if there were framed walls and sheetrock and moving things wouldn't be that big a deal. But the architecture of this building is such that you have big open spaces, which is great for flexibility. But whenever we do want to punch a hole in a wall, it's likely a load-bearing masonry wall in most cases. So we've accommodated that in the numbers as we've looked at it. But phase one is basically within the footprint and making the programmatic changes that the public was asking for meeting spaces and so forth. Okay. Phase two, if you put it in its simplest terms, takes phase one's already done. It's all this stuff. And then adding on a new custom built meeting room into that area that we talked about. Michelle, you were mentioning what about the earlier schemes? This was the one, I think we were told that the children's room version that we had over here in one of the schemes probably wasn't desirable. We had looked at a few other things, but the one that was desirable was putting a new meeting space here. So that's what this shows. So here's the entry, or Harmeet, if we extend it up here, here's the entry, whatever it is. But now we've gained this piece. This is relatively simple. And in fact, most of this could happen while the library was open, because we can partition this piece off and do this construction without affecting the library itself. Whereas the phase one things we were talking about, you would either have to break it into components and work in an area, then work in another area, which we accommodated. That drives up the expense. It would be easier if you could move out for a few months, but then you're talking temporary space and a cost for that. So,
but we did see when the last time the interior of the building was renovated, there was a very interesting drawing that showed how you move from one space to the next to stay in the building. So it has been done before.
we're doing it right now at Guilderland.
Yeah.
Literally moving the shells around to make it all happen during their construction. Now, we're showing this as phase two because it's a discrete piece that can be broken out. On the other hand, if you combined phase one and phase two, you could construct this first and then have this as a swing space, essentially move things into it as you renovate those areas. So for example, it could become the temporary children's room while you do all the phase one stuff here. Then the children move back, then you move some adult things and so forth. So it does give you some value if you did it first. But again, we were looking at some things we could pull apart to break it down into more manageable pieces.
And the size of this room accommodates, I think I said like 130 people. This imaginary line that I drew was, I didn't want to go beyond that point because that's sort of where the main portion of the park is. this could get larger if you wanted it to be a bigger space. And I also thought it would be nice to create an area here that could act sort of like as a stage for
For the lawn area.
for the lawn area. So that's what's happening.
So when you're doing outdoor programming and the things that happen at concerts and so forth, you would have power here, you would have maybe a step
covered
up.
way.
Yeah, a canopy, or, you know, maybe it's even lightweight, you know, tensile structures out there. There could be lots of neat things about that really expand its usability. At Wisner Library in Warwick, we have an outdoor children's plaza, and they can put tents. Oh, did we visit Wisner?
We did.
Yeah, okay. But yeah, so even in drizzle, you know, not pouring rain, but even in a drizzle, you could be outside under those canopies. So so that's what this phase 2 would be. And again, you can see that could be done completely separate from phase 1 or together with phase 1. Phase 3 then really starts to take the this corner of the building. So this is where we moved that integral stack system into this phase of construction and this addition. So we moved the elevator from the central point out here where it's going to make sense for future additions or other options. But
what
happens
that,
in
what
here.
that does is right now, this is only a 7'3" ceiling. So it allows us to raise the ceiling in the new floor of that area. So it feels more open, a better sort of connection between all of the collections by having that be a higher space. And then that's why we thought it made more sense to do the renovations of this all in this third phase.
Yeah. Plus, by now, if you've already done the meeting room, it gives us that swing space, and all we have to do is partition off along these column lines, and they can do the construction behind that wall and keep the rest of the library open. It'll mean limited access to some of the adult collection, but if you move it into either the existing meeting room or the new large meeting room, you'd have access to a good part of it at least.
But what I was saying about this one is, in this phase, you can take over more of this space to have this direct connection between the children's and the story time room. You can still have doorways into it from the main library. But that was one of the main, it was one item that was desired, was to have a direct connection. We also thought, well, maybe we make a much larger maker space, which can also be sort of a seminar space too. And then you gain this extra meeting room out here for the public that could be, you could still use it for kids for a smaller group, but it also is always nice to have an extra meeting room.
Can you explain quickly the reason that we can gain this space now is because the things that were here, where did they go?
They went all up
Upstairs,
to the
yeah.
upstairs. Well, the study rooms moved over to this
Into this addition.
expanded addition space, which made some sense to have them all on this main floor. But then the two offices and one conference room could then move upstairs so that all the staff is sort of, well, this staff stays here, but this staff can move up there. You can have a real boardroom. But we did do a couple little small tutor spaces or study spaces, intern spaces, so some leftover spaces in the corners.
And we could always use them as storage.
Yeah.
If you don't want to use them as tutors, there's never enough storage. So that works too. But you can see by getting rid of the columns that are throughout this space, which is above this space, it really frees up our ability to move office things up there. So this phase 3 then sort of brings us to the build out of what we were talking about and gives us an increase in collection, a tremendous increase in meeting space, better staff areas, better utilization. And we still have an undetermined phase 4 that can go off this way. So that phase 4 could be another addition, at least as big as this addition, or it could be parking improvements or outdoor program improvements out in that area. Or even Michelle, as you were mentioning, the extension of some staff areas and a drive-through pickup and so forth out in this area. or that could be combined into this phase. I mean, but at the moment, we're just sort of looking at lots of different options. But does this all make sense? And I should stop there. 2 questions. Does this all make sense to you? And again, the phasing can be shifted as priorities are determined. But the second question is there anything from schemes 1 through 3 point whatever or 4 that we looked at before that you say, wait, we were going to do that and I don't see it anywhere here? I think we picked up most of the priorities and got rid of the things that we didn't like the children being out here. But you would be the best judge of that. Any thoughts?
Well, I do notice on scheme 2, and I realize not everyone has this in front of them, but we do have a bump out. You called it addition 1, it looks like, at the very bottom of scheme 3 on your screen now.
Down here?
Have those 2 little bump outs.
Mhm.
To the left of that, you had a small addition for the studio conference book
Right.
sale space is what it was called.
Right.
Is that area another possibility for a small addition there?
Yes.
It is, but yes, absolutely. We can do that. Our thinking was we had started to create so many other spaces. We didn't want to just go forever and keep creating more and more spaces. But that's an option either as part of one of these phases or as a future. Again, at the end of the master plan, we can still say we have future expansion here.
Yep.
We have future expansion up here. We still have
And
opportunities
there,
in 10 years or whatever.
There's still the possibility here to extend too. But by the question of what can we do in just the footprint was the sort of the catalyst to see if we could get most of what you needed within the footprint of your existing building.
Right, and I think that original question was just because we hadn't seen what we could possibly do with the existing footprint, not that we were against those original plans that
Okay.
would, extend the property.
Well, certainly we can show dashed, the creation of spaces where future additions could be. And if it's a priority, we could even start to think through the interiors of those and how they would expand the areas that are adjacent to them or what would go in them. Sometimes it's tough to tell if that, phase 4 or 5 is going to be at least 10 or 20 years down the road. It can be an exercise in how far do you take it? We have space, we have the opportunity to do something there, but we also have time to think through what may happen with library technology and usage. Certainly, the things we're doing now with study rooms and tutor space and extra meeting spaces are different than they were 10, 20 years ago even. So we have the opportunity to roll with things if we know we can expand into those areas later.
But your question, Michelle, is we did sort of a minimal solution here to get a better entrance from Delaware Ave.
But
We could do that phase 1.
Yeah.
To make that some space that we think is important to have in that location.
Well, we say that, but you're going to see the numbers for the phases too, and that may, there may be a point where you say, oh, wait a minute, we have to make this a manageable number. So,
Of course.
there's a lot of variables in play at the moment, and the master plan will try and delineate what all those are, prioritize, and give us a firm direction. But I think I pointed out when we were talking early on, I showed you Kingston, which had like a 6-phase plan. And we've rearranged them as we've gone along because different grants became available or a priority came up that was, so what was originally phase 2 got deferred and we put phase 3 in front of it and actually did a phase 3.1 afterwards. So the master plan is flexible. There's lots of things we can change. And as you say, if we decide, wait, we really do need to add something here, that's easy to do. We know we have the room for it. Okay.
And I think Harmeed had a question before about what the setback was.
Oh.
Those 2 bump outs are right at the setback on Delaware Avenue. So we can only do an addition that, well,
we could get a variance.
we could get a variance to go beyond it if we wanted to, but that's sort of
Yeah, it would be difficult. You have to show a hardship in order to get a variance. And given that we have other opportunities to expand in different directions, that might not be easy to prove. Municipal buildings sometimes are easier to show a hardship than others. Wasn't this a plaza or garden
That's
as
the garden,
well?
that's
So
staying.
so we took out the addition there because we knew that was something important to stay. But as we say, there are other opportunities to add those things back in. And we think this gets you up, in terms of square footage, this probably puts us about where I would have expected at the end of phase 3 here, with still the opportunity to add thousands of more square feet in the future. Anything else you want to cover on this? We can come back to the plans. I see it's 10:44.
Wanted to ask a question
yes, Lisa.
about doors.
Doors?
We now would have 3 different entrances into the exterior.
Here and here.
Is that a concern? Jeff, I'm kind of looking to you because right now we have 1, so
One entrance into the main part of the library,
yeah.
Oh, you only
Oh.
have 2,
2. So we're definitely adding 1. There,
but I'm exiting.
Yeah, this one's just an exit that you
Okay.
wouldn't come
Wouldn't enter.
into. We don't want people entering the children's room first. I didn't mean to cut you off, Jeff. Sorry, but no, this one is technically not an entry to the space. It would probably be an alarmed door, as a matter of fact, because it comes off children's. But this one is the existing one, and then we added one here, but both are within easy sight of the main desk. But Jeff, I defer to you. Do you have thoughts on that?
I probably did do some thinking about that before I have some thoughts on that. Does that make sense?
Sure. Any other questions before we move on?
I did have one more question. We had a tour of the library recently, and so this question came up of the essentially 2 hallways that we have going in near the main entrance.
Here.
Yes. Well, that one, and then behind, go back, bring your arrow back up, and then go up a little more. That's that one and this one. I think the idea is to somehow keep the main library separate from this other meeting space area.
Correct.
But the conversation we had on our tour was there's actually never a time when we have meeting areas open when the library is not.
Okay.
So is there really a need to separate the 2?
I'm going to suggest this. At this phase, I would keep them separated because we want that decision to be a policy decision, not an architecture decision. In other words, you've decided the meeting room's never open unless the library is open. But you do have the option. If things change going forward, you could open one and not the other. I would suggest leaving them separated here, but in this phase, the next phase 2, now that you have the option to have this meeting space open, we could close this off here, depending on restroom access. That would be something we'd have to work out.
Yeah.
Because right now we're relying on these restrooms, but then this whole thing could be part of the library proper, if that's what you're getting at, Michelle.
Yeah.
And at that point, you'd still have a meeting room that could be separated because of where it is. We'd have to work out restrooms, but that's an opportunity maybe to then break this through. And because this is all glass, we've already broken through the walls here. That's a minimal change between phases 1 and 2. In other words, we put in these niches, but then they just become open. We take the glass out for the next phase. And now all of this is part of the lobby of the library. Or not lobby, but the main entry sequence. That's a possibility anyway. Because your plumbing is all here and you have a slab on grade, getting plumbing over to these areas, and we've talked about trying to get some things over here, but it's going to mean trenching and so forth. So that's where some of the expense comes in. But that might make sense if you were really looking to get rid of the redundant corridor.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
And I think I mentioned that at our last meeting. We'd like to make that one space, but for now, it is important to keep the 2 separate from our perspective. If you decide as an institution, not just now, but as far as we can see into the future, we don't plan on ever having meeting space available when the library is closed, then we can say, all right, we'll all go from that assumption, and the need for this separation goes away. Because then these restrooms are always accessible, but I don't want you to make that decision lightly. That's something we actually usually try to design into a building. You have it already. So taking it out was sort of, not what our first thought was, but if that's your policy and that's what you think for the foreseeable future, we can do that.
Okay.
That's
Okay.
easy to do.
And it actually gives good supervision for the restrooms and stuff like that if it's all one space, compared to, I'm sure staff at the desk now aren't quite sure what's happening out in the hall all the time.
Not perfectly, right?
Yeah. So, I'm going to stop sharing this screen for a moment, if I could, and go to, bear with me. Occupancy, lineal footage. So the lineal footage, just very quickly, you'll see in the summary, I think these were sent to you already, right?
Yes. I sent them.
Oh, am I sharing this? I'm not
After.
sharing it yet.
Oh.
Share screen.
You have the right one.
Okay, so this is the new in the master plan. We get up to 11,592 in phase 1, and the existing. Can I share this screen? Stop sharing, share screen. The existing is 10,393. So we have an 11% increase just to that first in collection, just to that first number. Now within the individual collections, there may be some other numbers we want to look at. Do you have any highlights to that, or
No.
thoughts on anything that changed? Did you have a chance to look at that, Jeff?
I did.
Collections and so forth? Did you have concerns?
Not yet. I would want to look at I think I like the space that's gained up in the hall, the new hallway up
Yep.
front. There's certainly more than you lose in nonfiction, but it's different shelving. So it would definitely be well, not definitely. I think my impression is that it would be a drop in the amount of nonfiction shelving available, and we would have to figure that out or accommodate that.
Yeah.
Right. And there will be some flow of where collections are. We need to make sure they happen in an intuitive and orderly way. So you don't have your L's way over there and your M's way over there, or, or genres that start to cross.
Yeah. That's a level of detail we haven't gotten to on the
Exactly.
staff, but I think we would have to get to there because that layout of the collection, it's always a challenge.
It is. And it's not something, I would say too, we're still talking about all these variables in the master plan. Trying to solve that right now is premature, because what's the building actually, at any given phase? We still don't know all the answers to that. But the long and the short of it is, we know we don't have an overall decrease. We can work things out. That's where we're going with it.
As you can see there, that's 3,018 for nonfiction, and it's
Yep.
like 3,400 existing. So
Yeah.
Oh, so that came down by
so it
400.
came down. That's the only one I believe that came down.
I agree.
Within that clip.
Yeah.
Okay. And Jeff, the other thing we would then talk about, that changes the status of some of these things would be, maybe a higher percentage goes into the new and popular collection, or stays there longer before it goes into the other collections. And that's a way to, as you know, to adjust the lineal footage in any given piece. So I'm going to go out on a limb here and share something that this is I want to make sure that we are on the same page. I'm going to show you some numbers, but they are very, very back of envelope numbers right now. Okay. But just to give you a sense of sort of order of magnitude or scale, this is not a document that was sent to you yet, because it's still very much in the draft form. Do you have this in front of you, a draft preliminary budget with today's date?
We see it. Yeah.
Okay. So what I did was, Lisa and I were working on this to try and summarize it in a way that made sense. So the main floor and the upper floor Your existing conditions are about 32,000 gross square feet. And then in phase one, obviously they stay the same, but we have those two small additions, addition 1 and addition 2. So your gross square feet grows very slightly. Phase 2, you have that meeting room addition, the way we were showing the phases. That's addition 3. So we're up to 35,000 square feet. And then in phase 3, we have addition 4, which is that rear corner where the elevator moves to. So we add another 2,000 per floor. So we're up to 39,000 square feet. So overall, you would add about 7,000 square feet if you did the 3 phases the way we were showing them. And I'll send you this document if you want it. But again, please, this is not a real cost estimate. This is just taking very rough numbers, and it hasn't thought through how much IT are we doing? How much, there's a lot of little pieces that can add up. It also hasn't thought through what are the costs of financing this. So if you had a referendum to pay for one, there are costs associated with the bond and bond anticipatory notes and all that. So, but given these numbers, phase 1, we took $200 per square foot to the net square footage, not the gross square footage. We're not renovating every area. So like the garage, for example, isn't included in the square footage. At $200 a square foot for that, a lump sum of about $250,000 to redo the site work. The 2 small additions are various, you can see that's only $250,000. And then I did furnishings. I put $38 a square foot, meaning all new. Now you may not want to do all that, but I'm just trying to think through worst case here. That gives us 6.1 million roughly. And then I added 24% for soft costs. I do realize that says 0.24%. That's just to make the calculation work in Excel, sorry. But 24%, meaning all the fees, all the, again, if you had, there's design fees, engineering fees, surveys, construction management, referendum costs, and so forth. 24% covers a lot of those things. But that phase 1, we're at 7.6 based on what we were showing.
Is that number including the I know we were originally including the demo, the changes in pools, or is that not inclusive of the nonfiction area and getting rid of the?
That's not inclusive of that
Right.
yet.
Right.
Okay. Now this is a very conservative number. So I, again, I feel like, yeah, we can make this tighter, but at this stage, I'm keeping it as broad as possible. I'm sorry, Lisa.
I need to interrupt for a sec because I need to drop off because I have another meeting to go to, but I just wanted to say thank you and let you know that.
Okay, thank you,
Okay,
Lisa.
Thank you.
All right, and just to confirm, that first 7.6 million does not cover removal of the poles in the fiction section.
No.
That's right. We moved it down here into phase 3. That's right. Okay. Now, $200 a square foot is a lot for renovation, but again, we're looking at you trying to stay in the building while you're doing it, which is going to make it more expensive. We were looking at the fact that a lot of it's masonry that isn't easy to just shift around. And we were sort of looking at a complete redo of a lot of the space. In other words, that we're refreshing almost everything. It's not like we're leaving the children's room alone. I mean, we were sort of touching every public space and almost every staff space. So we put a higher number on that, but that might easily be 150 instead of 200, which lowers that dramatically, obviously. But just for, again, back of envelope, if that's at 7.6, you can see phase 2 is really mostly just that addition. There's a little bit of renovation, a little bit of site work, but it's that meeting room addition and furniture. And that's a 2.3 number to build that addition that gives you the large meeting room, the entry area, and so forth. And then phase 3, we have 120,000 in to demo the house, and we have 370 for the stacks to remove all. That's your question about all those poles, because it's interior work. It's got to happen while we brace things to keep the rest of the building from falling down while it happens. Then we're re-renovating that space and redoing it. That's that number, the 1.3, a little bit of site work. And then we have that 2-story addition around that back corner where the elevator is going at 1.8. And then again, more furniture. So we're at 4.1 and again, 24%. We're at 5.1 for phase 3. So if you took these 3 phases, they total 15.1, give or take. But again, you could combine phase 2 with phase 1 and make it not, about 10, right? To 7.6 and 2.3. Or you could combine phase 2 with phase 3 and make this 7.6 and this one 7.4, 7.5. There's some flexibility there. Phase 4 is either a future addition or additions, future site work or parking. And what I haven't included up here are IT or data upgrades. We're doing a major rework at Pearl River right now, which is about the size of your library. And we have 500,000 scheduled for IT upgrades there. So that's a big number, but I don't know if that's a priority for phase 1 or if that happens later as we go along. The other thing I just wanted to add at the bottom, I know we're running out of time, is I would want to put contingencies on each of these individually or on the total. That is, these are the numbers for construction and so forth, but you never go into a project without knowing that you have a reserve to cover. We take a wall apart and there's piping in it that nobody knew, or we find hazardous materials, whatever it may be. Now, the contingencies at phase 1 are going to be lower than the later phases because the contingencies for the later phases are going to have to include escalation or inflation. If these phases are happening a year or 2 or even 5 years down the road, that means 2.3 million is no longer 2.3 million. Whereas if something's happening within the next year, you don't have to add that escalation contingency. You still have to add, though, a construction contingency and a design contingency to make sure that you can cover the things you want to do. Again, I'm asking you, not to swear to these numbers. Like you said, 7.628487, but just to give you an idea as we're looking at the rough scale and why we broke some of the things out the way we did. If we had included all that demo and renovation for the stacks area, for the pulled stacks area, this starts to rise quickly to 9 million, 9.5 million in phase 1. That may be okay. You might decide we want to do a referendum, let's cover that. But for now, we moved it out here to keep these 3 items as manageable separate pieces. For discussion, I should say that. This is up to you, but we're here to advise you on how to make what you want happen. So you could well say, like Michelle, I want that extra addition space on the street side. We can add that in. That is not a problem. But at some point we have to sort of say, okay, here's the general master plan. It can be adjusted, but this is the general thinking and consensus.
Okay.
All right.
All right.
So that was an hour. I apologize. I talk a lot, but are there any other things we want to talk about today? I mean, Lisa and I are here if you need us. Do you want to go through anything, go back and look at something again, or anything else?
I think I'm good. We've got some thinking to do on our side, but I appreciate running through it. Really helped me understand those phases and what was included in them, and I appreciate you taking the time to point those out to us.
Absolutely. And again, if anybody is looking at something from a previous scheme and you say, I really wanted that, or why aren't we looking at that? Please let Jeff know. He'll send us the bullet points and we'll go through it. But I think, the way we typically work this, we don't want to have 10 different versions in the master plan. The master plan has to give a direction. And
Right.
so what we've done is taken all the ideas that seem to work and resonate, put them into phases that work to give us one direction. But if there's something that you think we should rework there, let us know that and we'll accommodate it. All right.
Great.
So next step, and I think you brought this up, Michelle, at the last board meeting, we're not ready to go to the board and certainly not the public yet we're throwing this out there, but you may want to think about this a bit, and then we should schedule another committee meeting to review. So right now, if you have specific things you want us to look at, we can sketch a few of them and put them on paper. But at the moment, I would suggest let's start with you sitting on this for a little bit of time, thinking it through, and then getting back to us, and we can have a dialogue about what we like, don't like, what we want to change or leave.
Sounds good.
Does that make
Thank-
sense?
Yes.
Okay. As always, let us know if you have questions, and we're here for you.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Much.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye-bye. All right. So there's only Michelle and Mark, if you want to move in second to gavel out here.
Sure, I'll make a motion to gavel out on the public meeting.
All right. I'm declaring we're done by numbers. All right. I'm going to stop the live.
Done by attrition.
Done by attrition. I like that.